What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Ruben and Jessie podcast. As always, I am Jessie.
And I'm Ruben.
And if this is your first time, this is not your last time. And if you've been here for before, well, welcome back to the show. Today is part three of areas of life that Ruben and I get to work on.
Oh yeah. And it's the big one, big number one.
Big numero uno. Um, if you're just tuning in, go back to the last part one and part two. We've been sharing these three areas of life, and each one is progressively a deeper, more central area of improvement in our lives. So which ones have we had before so far?
So yeah, just to catch up, obviously this was weeks apart, so like we forget. But I know for me, I had my first one was dealing with like commitment. The third one was like committed to like certain projects, just jumping around all the time. The second one I talked about integrity. For you, the number three was self-expression. And our last one was, see, I forgot.
I think it was honest communication.
Honest communication, yeah. Like going into the uncomfortable parts of that, which is gonna weave into your number one as well.
Yeah. Oh no, it was like speaking in love and truth. So having like
Speaking of
love,
truth, yeah.
like communicating in a way that's actually with love instead of like banter, sarcasm, or like, you know,
Speaking straight from the heart.
Speaking straight from the heart. Exactly. And today, and it's funny because when you actually look at all three, like they all weave into each other,
Yeah, 100%.
in different ways. So for me today is integrity, which was Ruben's number two, but for me is definitely number one.
Right.
And for Ruben, it is.
For me, it's going to be about selfishness.
Okay, so last time I went first. So this time, brother, I'm gonna let you take the wheel.
Yes. So this one came up because it's always consistently came up, especially as recent years. Obviously, we're big seekers of knowledge, as I mentioned before, and something that comes up like when you study the most successful people, or you read these biographies of these people, their missions, their goals, whatever like comes up, usually comes to be in service of others. And as whatever you think about Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk and all these people, they have this sense of like they feel like they're in service to humanity in some shape or form, right? Whether that's Amazon saving you time from going to the store, trying to put people on Mars, or Elon Musk trying to save the planet so that humans can survive long, and trying to bring people to Mars to make sure that like human life extends beyond just like our physical bodies, right? So it's all about service, and something I've struggled with, and I call it like my very own version of single child syndrome. Have you ever heard of that, Jesse?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So yes, I have siblings, but many may be unaware that I'm actually the only child between my mother and my father. All my other sisters and brothers are technically half brothers and sisters. I don't consider them that, right? They're like first brothers and sisters to me. That's how we grew up. But at the end of the day, like biologically, I'm the only one with the genetics from both my mother and my father, right? So growing up, I spent a lot of time alone. As soon as my mom allowed me to stay home alone, allowed me to go out and do my own things, I took advantage, and I've been doing that since about 9, 10 years old. And over time, I grew this sense of this big idea of selfishness. And obviously it comes from ego. It comes from the idea that people let me down in the past, including my own mother, right? My father, like leaving when I was a baby. So if you look at the history of my life, like people letting me down, I'm always like, I can just do this alone. And we talked about this in our men's group stuff. But at the end of the day, this selfishness is really something that comes in inside. Like I don't really show it as much. I try to be as supportive and helpful, especially nowadays, as possible. But the selfishness comes from the fact that when someone asks me to do something, I think about immediately what's in it for me. And that's really a human condition. A lot of us think of that, right?
Mm,
But it's like, what's in it for me? Like, why do I want to make more money? Well, it's because I want to do XYZ. It's not because it's like, yeah, I want to make myself comfortable, but I also want to be able to provide for XYZ. It
mm,
always goes back to me. Like, what is this going to do for me? Why do I have these particular things? It's because it helps me.
mm,
I've been in situations where someone may need my help for X reason, and I'll be like, I'm not available till X time, because in my head I'm like, nope, I still have to work out, I still have to do, maybe a little bit of writing. I want to make sure I get my 30 minutes of reading done. So like, I come first. And like,
mm,
yes, there's like a lot of people saying that now, like it's bad to be too selfless, right? So my thing is like finding that balance. It's so challenging. I say right now I've grown a lot. Back in the day, I was probably like 90% selfish and 10% like selfless. Now I can say I'm like more 70% selfish and 30% selfless, because I still do it. Like I still, whether that's like, I don't know, my mom would text me and she was like, do you have time to jump on a call? And maybe she wants to talk to me. My mom won't tell me through text if she needs to talk to me about something. She'll just say, hey, are you available? Like, I know you're busy. Like, are you available? And bro, sometimes I can be just laying out doing nothing, and I'll be like, no, like, like no, because I want, like, maybe in 15 minutes I'm about to go for a run, I'm about to work out, or I just want to read my book and enjoy my coffee and smell the fresh California air outside, right? Like those things come first all the time before even my family.
mm,
There has been some guilt that has come out of that, which definitely like makes me really think. Now I'm conscious about it. Like, am I really being selfish right now, or am I like quote unquote taking care of myself
mm.
first, putting on the oxygen mask first before I put it on other people? So I'm like, well, so now that's kind of where I say I'm not going to go anymore, because it's just going to be repeating myself. But yeah, like I'm still like, that's still a big struggle for me. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah. What do you think is the push towards more selflessness coming from?
Yeah, I think what I tell myself, or at least what I think, right? Because I'm not entirely sure, but I'm always like, it's all about energy management. Like, how do I manage my energy to make sure I actually have the energy to be in service of others?
Mm.
And to me, that's doing all these things that I put first
No,
before.
what I mean is like, what do you think is the actual, not that that's like why you are selfish, but I'm saying like,
Uh,
what is where do you think the desire to be more of service is coming from right now?
I would, I think like, as I think about it, you asking that question, because I'm like, I haven't thought about that. Um,
What we do, bro.
this is what we do, right? It's See, Jesse's coaching me right now, folks. Um, for me, I think it's like, I brought in like the success of like these giants, right? Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk as my first example, because I have this goal to help at least 10 million people, as you heard me say, in my lifetime, like leave a legacy.
Mm,
Um, and I think in order to do that, I have to be a sense of more selfless, and allow myself to support other people, um, without any expectations of anything in return. Like that has to just be, that's the way. You know what I mean? As the Mandalorian would say, this is the way. Like, in order for me to accomplish that goal I have set for myself, it's like removing my ego out of it, because it's all ego, right?
mm,
It's like removing that out of the space in order for me to provide things for people without any expectations of what's returned. Because obviously, going back to being like selfishness, like if I have that expectations of a return and a person doesn't like uphold that, I'm going to be upset, and that's going
yeah.
to allow more negative like feelings towards other people. Like I said, like in the past, it's all been, people letting me down. and me having to do things on my own, or like me asking for help and no one like going, or like uh uh when I graduated from college, the only people that came to my graduation were my ex, my mom, my sister, and my stepfather. But all my aunts were invited, all my uncles were invited, and no one came. And like I remember the feeling of that, like bubbling. Or I was 21 years old. It's just bubbled inside my chest to a point that I was like, I don't need anybody. And if family can't be there for me, who else is going to be there for me? You know what I mean? And that comes back around because then, when I came back from China, my aunt was really there for me. She provided me her space, her home. So kind of funny how that works. But but at that time, I was like really in that. But that was because I set an expectation. What if I don't? I don't have to deal with that. And at this, it's like a win-win. I don't have to deal with that, and other people don't have to feel obligated to reciprocate. It's just like, hey, I did it out of the kindness of my heart because that's what I truly want to do. You know what I mean? Without that expectation. So
yeah, I definitely I hear you. I think that's something I have also dealt with for a while, to the point of like also like wondering like why, like how do I give,
mm-hmm.
like what does that actually mean to give? Because I feel like there's like these extremes.
Yeah.
Where like there's like the version of giving where you have to be like a martyr in a sense.
Martyr. Yep.
You know what I mean? And it's like, now I got to go to Africa and save the children, or I got to like be broke because I'm volunteering all the time, or I have to work in soup kitchens to be a giver. I have to do these like very specific things to show that I am giving to others. And really, I think it's been this past year. I think it's really been since San Diego.
Right.
Because, as like when I was there, I was completely alone. And I saw my self-destruction. And I was like, man, like to be alone, to be truly alone, or at least feel like you're truly alone, um, is demoralizing and can bring out the worst version of yourself, and it made me recognize like how the people in my life were the pegs of my, foundation to allow me to flourish and to be who I am, And so when I moved back, it was really just like recognizing that I get to do that for others, like I get to be a peg for other people, and allow others to continue to be pegs for me, and just like the humility of like no man is an island, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And so for me, where the selfless, like where the giving has come is not, like I definitely do give, when I have cash, I'll give homeless people money, or like I'll send donations out to different organizations randomly, or like I'll send someone something, because I was thinking about them, like whatever it is. But really, where, at least for me, where it's been shown, and obviously like the men's retreats work now is like, oh, this is my area where this is a vocation, like this is where I can be of service and get paid, and have that energy exchange of really being of service to others. But I feel like for anyone who's listening to this, who is like, oh, I'm like that too. What I'm finding for me is like like what I was talking about last time, which is like showing up with love. Like, can you show up with love, wanting the people around you, whether it's a stranger or someone you've known forever, to feel their best, or to feel seen, feel heard, because that trickles, that, it's like paid forward mentality. It trickles to them, and then they trickle it out into others, and blah, 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 blah. And that's really what we don't need a bunch of saviors on this planet. We just need people, giving hugs and smiling at each other,
Word.
So the more we can just show up in that way. And then I think that also that energy makes you like, it pulls you to give, you know, it pulls you to like, how can I share this more with someone? How can I allow this loving energy into a space or into a person because I'm feeling it, you know? It's like when you feel that love, you just want to give it, you know, like because you feel whole. Once you feel whole,
Exactly.
you know, you focus out. You know, I think the selfishness comes because to some extent you don't feel whole, or you feel afraid, or you feel like you're in scarcity and that you need to do something, you know.
Exactly.
Um, and that's been coming up for me as well when it comes to like the routine, you know, of like I need to get this done by this point, or I
Yep.
need that
Yep.
done by that point. What I'm noticing with that is like there's a strange, like I'm having like an inner dialogue battle with David Goggins because I'm like there, because I feel like that really helped me, you know, like reading his book. And if you listen to older podcasts, like we were talking about him and Cameron Haynes and all these guys a lot, and like reading their stuff and doing that, being that type of way where you're just like every day is the grind, and I have my things that I'm doing at this time, and nothing is getting in my way, you
Right.
know.
Right.
And I'm now like trying to understand, or trying to see how I can integrate that mentality with
Hmm.
also being like, but like life is wonder,
Exactly.
like life is wonder. And how can I continue to uphold my disciplines while also like being available for what the universe is presenting me that day,
Mm.
or who the universe is presenting with me that day, and knowing how to discern whether this is a person, a place, or a thing that I like should lean into today because this is where I'm being called to be at right now, or like, nah, I gotta get my shit done now, and like, no, like I can't talk to you, I can't help you, I can't, nope, not today,
Exactly. Exactly.
So I'm trying to figure that out myself as well.
Yeah, I think this conversation leads me to the idea of this balance, right? Like, I'm sure there's probably people listening to this and be like, Ruben, you're talking about selfishness, but I am a martyr. I am, these people listening, and I've heard a few people, and especially in my last men's group facilitation, like two of the guys are like, I'm a martyr. Like, I give, 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 give. Like, that's me. And in that scenario, it's just like, hey, maybe you should meet with a selfish person like me and figure out like what they do to take care of themselves and make sure they come first before anyone else. Versus my challenge is being that like giver, not to the point of a martyrdom, but being able to go and find my middle ground between like being able to pull in things for myself to make sure I can be in service and have the energy to be in service, but be in service enough where I'm not breaking down my own boundaries to make things happen for other people. So it's like this healthy mixture. And I think you talking about David Goggins and Cameron Hames brings up a really good point, because it's like, to what extent of selfishness that does that come in?
Mm.
And again, it's always like bio individuality is so crucial here because everyone's so different. Like, that's why I said, like, I don't think you'll ever be 50-50. You'll lean into more selfishness most time. Sometimes you'll lean more into selflessness sometimes. And obviously the cycles of your life also depend on where you're at, right? Like, I know that we're kind of on this grinding cycle right now, this up and up cycle, so that we can have the things that we need to be in this space of like, I'm good. Like, everywhere in my life is filled. So now I have the power, the energy, and that energy can come financially. It can come in so many ways, emotionally, like all these different ways, and be able to give in full abundance. Like, my cup is so full and I get to pour it, the whole idea of like, if you're blessed, be a blessing,
Mm.
which I think is a Stoic philosophy quote. But
you know Well, two things I want to clarify there is like, one, I actually, now that we're talking about it, is like, I actually don't want people to confuse what we're saying to say that we think David Goggins or Cameron Haynes are necessarily selfish people.
right, right,
They're actually like, they support a lot of people. They're the way
100%.
they, just by being who they are, they get people off their ass and
Right. 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 Right.
changing their lives. So it's like they're definitely of support. And, in many ways, I know that they do what they do because they know the impact they're creating for others. You know, they hold themselves high in that regard because they're like, I have to get up and get this running because someone's watching, you know. So they definitely, it's just their path is through the path of individuation and individuated growth, you know, like
Yeah,
their service is themselves, right? Their service is like being an example of what's possible when you really commit to specific things in your life. Um, and I'm sure there's a lot behind the scenes that we don't even know that they're doing for
exactly.
other people, you know. So that's there. And then the other thing that I want to clarify too is like, you know, the whole thing about like having these things in your life to then be of service is like, well, you can just have your cup, you can just choose that your cup is full right now.
It's true. Yeah,
You know what I mean? Because what does it take for a cup to be full? You know, you got love in your heart, you got water, you got food, you got home, your cup's full, bro.
that's true. Yeah, no, you're
You
right.
know what I mean? But that like, and that's not like we all, that's everybody though. Everyone thinks that, including me, you know, like that's a mentality of like, I got to get to this point
Hmm.
to 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 be able to give of myself, you know, um, or like I got to get to this point and then I can worry about others or think about others or support
Right.
others. And you can change that out with anything. It doesn't have to be other people. It could be like, I got to get to this point to start learning this thing, or I got to get to this point to start taking care of my health. It's like, nah, you could just do that shit right now, you know, in whatever way you can, you know. And like I
Yeah.
said, it's like it's as simple as just like showing up with an open heart, you know, like
Right.
just showing up with an open heart, you're giving, you know, because when you start showing up with an open heart, you start to see how many people are not showing up with an open heart. And you're like, damn, the world needs more of this, you know?
100%, 100%. And that's the most important line you said, like where, do it where you can, because like as soon as you were saying that, I was thinking like, shit, like I know a lot of people right now who are, work two jobs, like trying to figure out how to make ends meet. So they only have survival. Like I need to get
Mm,
food on the table. I need to get shelter. I don't have time to think about how I can give others. I don't have time to think about how I'm doing all these like you can say self-development things, like
mm,
exercise, like all these other things that I'm reading a book right now about exercise, and he talks
mm,
about how like it's funny how like we never needed that back then because humans mostly were like monkeys, and monkeys spend a lot of time just lounging around doing nothing.
mm,
And then we became this society that's like, for some reason, why is it that the people who make more money are really worried about these things versus like
mm,
the poor, the people that are in the
mm.
like how I grew up, or like on food stamps and all that? Why are they the bigger people? So it's just like, I don't know where I was going with that. I just lost my train of thought. But
Basically, I think you were just saying that, like, yeah, depending on where you're at,
yeah,
your capacity
there
to
we go.
serve it becomes smaller, or higher, depending on what you have available for you.
Yeah.
And I agree. And then to some extent, it's almost like this is where it gets meta, because it's like, if you are in a tough spot, can you give your ability to receive and let others give to you, you know? Because how many of us do that as well, where we're
That's
like,
true.
you know, where we're like, oh, I'm going through a rough patch, I'm gonna hide, you know, I'm just
Mm,
not and
tell
I'm
nobody.
so guilty of that, you know, of
Yeah.
like when things are tough, when things have been tough, I don't talk to people, you know, I'm not like reaching out, I'm not like saying what I need.
San
Or
Diego, bro.
bro, San Diego, I was gone. I was a goner, you know, until I had a fucking mental breakdown. And then I like exploded on you, and you were like, where was this whole time?
Time. I was even out there a few days, you know?
Yeah. And it's just like all inside. It was all inside, you know,
Mm,
until I just cracked, you know. Um, and that taught me, you know, that like when you're going through something, reach out, you know, because other people are in position to support you, you know, they're ready, and it makes them feel good to be able to support you.
exactly.
So it's like this ability to give, your ability to receive
Mm,
is the
mm.
thing as well, you know.
Yeah, amen. 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 And I hope.
Oh, and actually, like I was talking about this yesterday, which is like I can see this way of living where this idea of giving and receiving doesn't even exist anymore, because it's
Ooh.
just the way you are. Like the way society is just like this ebb and flow. Like the ocean doesn't think it's giving and receiving, when it's like ebbing and flowing, right? It's like it just that's what the ocean does.
Right.
It's not a task that it's like, okay, now we have to go forward, now we have to go back, now we have to go forward. It just does its thing. So it's like, there has to be a point where we get to this place where we're not thinking, oh, he gave me something, or like, oh, now I have to receive. And then it's like, okay, well, now I'm gonna go.
I'm obligated to give.
It's not even. It's either it's like now I'm doing my giving part, and then at 3 o'clock I'm gonna do my receiving part. It's like it's like just in a life where like that's how you live, like the way you inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhaling is giving and receiving, right? But you're not thinking about that. You're not like So I think there's a point where we can all just like inhale and exhale, giving and receiving.
Mm-hmm. I hope. And that can be a whole podcast on its own.
Yeah, that could be a whole podcast, bro.
We get to transition to you.
Yes.
Talk about your number one, which is integrity. Like
Integrity.
Where's that coming from, bro?
Yeah. So the integrity for me, why I made it number one was I just see it now more than ever how it shows up everywhere, right? Because I think the integrity, when I started paying attention, and I didn't even actually use the word integrity before. I used the word commitment, but I feel like integrity is a more universal term for everything. Because initially, and this, like one of my bad habits was like starting something and not finishing, or saying I'm going to do this and not following through, But what I started to realize was how you do anything is how you do everything. So that was really stemming from a deeper level where it was like within me, I was not in integrity with myself. So like, and I mentioned this before, and whether it's a self-expression or communicating with love, it's like I would show up differently around different people, depending on who I'm with, I'll adapt to them and their way of talking, or like my values can change at the drop of a dime depending on how tired I am or how hungry I am, or how I feel towards a job, for example. I'll show up a certain way, or do something a certain way because because I knew it was out of alignment with myself. So I would perform out of alignment with the responsibility of the task, or a big one that is like this fear of failure, or fear of being seen in my totality, meaning like, let's say I made a commitment that I'm going to wake up at 6 a.m. every day. And I'm in and this has happened where like I'm in a group chat where like we're texting like, that we got up at 6 a.m. we did this thing, whatever. Right. And there have been days where I'm waking up not at 6 a.m. because I didn't do the right thing the night before. And it was one of those things where it's like, oh, it was just one night, and I'll get up at 6, it's fine. I'll go to bed a little bit later, like whatever, because I want to talk to this person, or typically it's that. It's like, I just want to have a conversation. And so I'm going to go to bed a little bit later, wake up a little bit later. Or no, think I'm going to wake up on time, but I do wake up later, and I don't own it. I don't own the fact that I did that. I just won't say anything, and then the next day it's like I'm back to 6 a.m. and like, woo, gung ho, right? But it's like the fact that I'm not acknowledging that I didn't actually wake up at 6 a.m. Or like, let's say I woke up at 6:10. I'll say I woke up at 6 a.m. because it's like, what's 10 minutes? But it's like, it's fucking 10 minutes, bro.
It's like sweeping everything under the rug,
Yeah, exactly. Sweeping things under the rug, and not holding myself to the truth and what comes out of my mouth, and that's a big one, is like, which is something I'm becoming more and more aware and patient of, is what is coming out of my mouth, not just like what words am I saying, what do they mean, but when I say, hey, I'm going to do this thing, do I really mean that? Am I really ready to commit to that? Or is it just another thing that I just say because it sounds cool, it sounds good, or it sounds like the nice thing to say? And then when push comes to shove, or someone asks me about it, a month later, it's like, hey, how's that thing going? I'm like, so it's like, and
How many times does that happen with us when we have a conversation about like whether that was like a diet you were trying or
right, yeah.
like any of that stuff? It was just like Jesse would be like, I mean, I would do it too. Like it'd be like, oh, you were doing that thing. And you're like, yeah, I decided not to because of XYZ. And you like, we find excuses to say why we
Yeah,
stopped.
we give reasons.
Exactly.
Which like is like a lot of times is like you can mitigate reasons by research and like knowing and preparation. But that is not like my top two best qualities is research and preparation, I'm very much like promoter, right? It's like jumping into things, and fucking just like seeing what's going to happen. And which is a great quality at times. Like it really can be a great quality. It's great for someone who, when it's great for when you need to adapt. Like if life is changing, you you bet your ass I know how to adapt. If things are changing, if work is changing or relationships are changing, I know how to adapt. It's not a problem. It's really not. I'm not afraid of those things. To step into those things. But the flip side is like who's gonna believe me? Anymore. Like who's gonna believe me when I say we're doing this thing? And then am I even gonna believe myself? Because how many times have I said I was gonna do this thing and didn't follow through? And I know I've gone significantly better in these areas.
100%.
And a lot of it has been like letting go of fantasies, of like what this means or how I'm going to do something or whatever. And I think the other thing is just becoming more aware of who I actually am, And I think that's part of growing up, but also there's grown-ups who never fucking know who they are, And
you got adult children out there, a lot of them too.
Yeah. Or like, yeah, exactly. Adult children. And so, and then it also shows up in relationships where it's like, and I mentioned this before with the communication is what am I accepting in myself when I show up in a relationship, and what am I accepting from others? And I've definitely been someone who lets, I mentioned this before, I let things slide because I just, I hold space, I know how to hold space for people. I'm compassionate, but then again, it's like, well, then I also let myself slide, because it's like whatever you do to yourself, the way you treat yourself is the way you treat others. So it's like, I let myself get away with bullshit, so I'm gonna let others get away with bullshit, and the more I'm like, no, you, to myself, the more I'm like, no, this is wrong, this is not okay, or like, this is how you should do it. This is what a good relationship with yourself is. Then I'm like, well, that's all I want. It's like the better relationship I have with myself, that's what I want in my relationships with others. And I'm choosing to no longer hold space for anything less than that, because I'm not allowing it within myself. And integrity, to take it even a step further of integrity, is like, I also see this with my spiritual practice or my belief systems, because I have a very strong knowing that, I'm a co-creator with the universe, right? And I've seen it happen. I've seen these experiences in my life where I'm like, I made this with the universe. There's no other fucking way. That this is not a coincidence. This didn't fall out of the sky. It was like, this was my intention. This was my intention. And there was no linear understanding of how this could have happened. And it happened. And it happened because it was my fucking intention.
Right.
And I followed that intention till it became fruition. So I've seen this happen. But what I'm becoming more and more aware of in my life is the way I participate in my day-to-day doesn't always, and when I say always, I mean often, is stemming from the place of I'm a co-creator with the universe.
Right.
Often it feels like I'm playing catch up with life. Like I'm jumping from one thing, like I'm jumping from one task into the next task. I'm rushing when I eat. I'm rushing when I drink water. I'm rushing when I'm going to the gym. I'm rushing when I'm getting this task done. I'm rushing when I'm getting that task done. I have to do all these things today, and I have to talk to this person, and I got to reach out to 20 people here, and this, and that, and that. And it all comes from a place of like, we just got to get this thing done because we got to get the next thing done. Right.
Yep.
And it's like
the hamster wheel.
Exactly, the hamster wheel. And it's like, is that the relationship I want to have with the universe? And what's interesting is like when the actualization of things have come into my life, I've noticed it's been the strongest during times of despair. Like when I'm down and out, and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck to do. I don't know. Like there's nothing going on. You know what I mean? And I'm sitting on my ass. It's in those times where magic happens. It's when I'm sitting on my ass and I'm just like, I want this. All I'm thinking about is what I want, because I can't actually do anything. Like like the opportunity has to present itself, or I'm pushing towards an opportunity, but I'm also most of the day just like lounging around reading books or walking a lot, or like trying to find an opportunity and like really like pushing it into the universe that it happens. Why? Because it's surrender. It's like I'm my only focus is what I want. My only focus is like what's coming into my life. And even then it's not like all the way pure, but I know that the room for growth is like, how can I be with a cup of water the way I would be with the most beautiful woman on earth? I mean, like how can I be the same way? How can I fucking like sit with this glass of water and be like, wow, look at this glass of water. You know what I mean? Like, wow, it fuels me. I'm made of this water, like, wow, that's crazy. Or like if I'm reading a book, like, can I be like, I can't believe how much time someone has put into creating this thing. Right. And how I get to sit here and read, like, can I bring that amount of like childlike awe into everything, into every moment? I think I can. I think it's possible. Because if you're always living like that, like imagine when the
big things come.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you actually know that you're a co-creator of the universe, and what your part in the co-creation is intention and follow through, then if my constant intention is, wow, life is amazing and everything is incredible, and I just want to share this and experience this like beauty of life in every moment, then what type of life is going to be created around me? Instead of this, like, I got to rush from one thing to the next and like forget to pray over my food, or forget to acknowledge, my body, or forget to acknowledge like the sun, like just these things that we constantly take for granted that are epic things that we would not exist with in our lives, and I feel like it's even like gratitude is a huge part of it, but it's like, to me, it's like even deeper than gratitude, because it's like living in gratitude, it's not being grateful, it's like being gratitude,
so wait, repeat that again for the audience.
It's like not being grateful, but being gratitude. Like you are gratitude, you know, that's all you emanate is
Cool.
gratitude.
I just wanted people to hear that twice. Because that's some strong shit. You know what I mean?
Well, I've been learning a few things lately.
I see. You have been. And
Yeah.
I know this is, we talk about this is a challenge, but like, how is this showing up for you right now? We're going back to integrity because I know we went a little meta, but going back to integrity, like, what is this looking like for you now? How is it looking different? Like, what are the things that you're doing to combat it? And how is it still showing up as a challenge since it is number one?
Well, so how it's showing up as a challenge is like what I mentioned just now with like whether it's the messages or like the way I'm living my life.
Mm-hmm.
But it really comes down to the way I'm living my life, because you know this feeling, right? When you're in a good spot, like let's say you just had let's say you went to the spa, you had a beautiful day, you microdosed on some mushrooms,
I'm about to
you
do
know,
it right now. No.
you know, like imagine you just had like you're in that field. You had a wonderful blowjob, like you're in a good spot. You know what I mean? Like you feel good, right? If someone asked you, did you get XYZ thing done? And you didn't get it done, would you be like stressed out about telling them the truth? No, you just be like, nah, I didn't do it, but I'll get around, I'll do it tomorrow. Or like, if you had to get, something done and you're in this like blissed out state, it's like, oh, I got to get that thing done. Let me just quickly like walk over and make it happen. So it's like all these things that we do that we're like, okay, when this happens, I have to show up this way. It's like, no, if you're always just showing up this way, you're not thinking about how you're going to show up in that moment because you're already showed up,
Yep.
You're already there. You're already at that point. You don't have to get to a point to be at the point,
Right.
It's like once you get used to working out, you're not thinking, oh, I have to like amp myself up to go to the gym. That's not even the thought process. You're just like, oh, I don't know how else to live at this point. It's like, I don't know how else to live my life other
Right.
than things, because I've done them it's such an integral part of my existence,
Right.
Or like showing up. It's like once you get to the point where you're like, there's enough, like when the love is overpowering the trauma inside of you, it's like the way you show up in any relationship becomes how you show up in every relationship, because you're no longer dealing with these demons, it's just like you are good, you're good, a tree is a tree is a tree type of thing,
Mm-hmm.
It's always going to be a fucking tree. And so it's really like, and where the action is like really sharpening my relationships. So anyone who's in my life, anyone, doesn't matter big or small, all the relationships are equal. The giving and receiving of the relationships are equal. And if they're not equal, then they get to address and become equal, or they're no longer there, And again, it doesn't matter how big or small those relationships are. So another thing was like, recently I took on a contract for copywriting and graphic design that is paying well. And I recently decided to shift the contract so I would have less work with them. And I'd be getting paid less for them because so I can focus on things that are in more alignment with where my heart is now, which is the men's retreats and the coaching and stuff like that, because it's showing
Kings
up.
of heart, baby. Kings of heart.
And it's like it's showing up, and I know that, and it's also like just automatically knowing that, like, not to bullshit them and not to bullshit myself, and know that I'm not going to have the time to do everything they're asking of me. So it's like, let's not even have that conversation. Let me just tell you straightforward that, like, here's where I'm at. Here's what time I can actually commit to. And yes, I will take a lower pay, but here's some win-win opportunities to fill in the gap for what you need. And you can actually spend my money there to get more of a result than you would get out of me, which I would have never done in the past. Like in the past, oh, they're paying me this much. Fuck it. I'll like overextend and work late or do whatever, to just make that money. Cause like I need that money, whereas now it's like, no, let me meet them in the middle, take, sign up for what it makes me feel good, what I like, what about that contract that do I actually like and know I can do well, what about that contract is going to pay me well enough, and then focus on the things that are in true alignment with where I'm at, so there's that. And the last thing is like going about my day, seeing a beautiful woman in everything I do, seeing my best friend in everything that exists around me, and taking my time with what's in my day, which becomes interesting because it's like when you choose to actually take your time with things, you're doing less things. It's like, exactly, like exactly. You have to be really fucking clear on what you're doing in your life, because you can't just be like, well, I'm just going to quickly do this for 25 minutes,
Right.
or I'm going to take an hour here and just get this done, like flurries of activity. It's like, no, here are the 5 important things in my day, because I know outside of these 5 things, I'm going to, instead of walking to the gym and getting there in 7 minutes, I'm going to smell the flowers, I'm going to look at the birds. I'm going to, take my time, I'm going to walk slowly. So I'm going to get there actually in 15 minutes. Everything's gonna take longer. So it's like I have to be super clear on like what are the things I need to get that like are important for me to get done today, so I can really just live my life without running to the next thing.
Right. And I can sense that a big challenge. I'm pretty sure our listeners are like, how the fuck? Like, we live in Western society.
Yeah.
Like, Western society is all about like how fast, how efficient, like, I work in a company that's super, super like fast and efficient. Like, things come up, you got to be ready for that. Like, your calendar is usually full. Like, and I'm better at it. Like, I try to not. I have all the boundaries. I call myself the king of no at work, because I'm just like, if you want me to do a good job, have that the feedback I've gotten, these are the boundaries that have to be in place, or else I'm going to do okay and everything, and you're not going to get the quality that you expected of me. So like, how can we make that happen? Well, it means I have to do less shit in the day, you know what I mean, then be fast and have like deliver something that doesn't have the quality, but I can give you the quantity. You're just going to sacrifice in the quality. So like, how can we, like, I don't know, help people that are listening to figure out, like, I know I want to do less, but like Western society is just like go, 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 go. They don't really allow that time to slow down. So what do you think?
The thing that comes, and I want to hear your response as well.
Yep.
But the thing that comes to mind for me is like remembering you're a co-creator with the universe. Like this idea of Western culture is an idea,
It's an
and
idea, yeah.
we all live in our own existences, and it's like you can just choose that this is your life, but you have to, it has to be all the way. So it can't be like, I'm a co-creator of the universe, but I'm gonna create as soon as I get X, all these fucking
All
things.
these things, yep.
It's like, no, you're choosing that now, and you're like, universe, me and you, we're rocking, let's go. And so it's like you're walking hand in hand with the universe into everything you do, and it's like the moment you start going, oh, but this thing, you just drop the universe.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So it's like always knowing that you're hand in hand, always knowing that your reality was created by you. You created your reality. So if it's not fucking what you want it to be, then you have to, it's the change comes within. Like, what are you doing about, what is your internal landscape that's creating your external landscape? Everyone, I'm sure everyone who's listening to this podcast has had the experience that I've said before, which is like, you were in a, it was a, and probably they've had it multiple times. Otherwise they wouldn't be still listening to this, because it wouldn't resonate at all. Right. Where it's like, you were in a situation, you had an intention, and that intention came through, and you had no fucking idea how that happened. Like the circumstances that were put in place for that to actually happen is like out of this world. And so knowing that like that's not a coincidence and that's not something that is rare. You can live life like that every day. Every day can be magical, you know?
Yes,
Every day can be absolutely full of
1000%.
wonder and magic and like how the fuck is this happening every day? Because you're committed, you know, you let go of linear time and space and you're rocking, you know, with the universe. So
We're gonna have to do a whole podcast on that because people are probably wondering like, how the fuck do I be a co-creator of the universe? And it's just like,
ooh,
I think we should talk about that.
a good episode for sure.
Yeah, I think that. So, folks, you'll know what to expect next. But if you want to get started, I highly recommend reading Becoming Supernatural.
Ooh,
That's a
yes.
great start.
Great start. Joe Dispenza is a great start. Absolutely.
That, and if you want to see a real example of a story of a man who like surrendered to the universe, the surrender experiment, I always talk about it. I've mentioned
I
it
have
on
to
this
read that
podcast.
book because that
It's
book has keys, bro.
it has keys, exactly, and that's what I read, and I think the timing of it coming into my life, and that's what that's what we're talking about. Like here, like what's the magic in the world? Is when you get a book that lands in your hands and you read it, and you're just like, what the fuck, like it just blows you away. It's like this is exactly what I needed at this time. And sometimes, at least for me, I always have like a running list of books on my shelf that I have not touched, but for some reason I'll finish my book, the current book, and I'll randomly be like, what am I going to read next? And I just let my hand glide on it. I pick the book out and I'm just like, whatever, I'll read this to see. Not all the time, but some of the time I read it. I'm just like, what the fuck? This is exactly what I needed at this moment.
Yeah.
So, folks, have more books than you need, because trust me, sometimes you just need, it'll come to you when you absolutely are like, I maybe need this right now.
Yeah.
And you'll probably just go for that book and be like, I need to read this at this moment. But anyway, what I wanted to say based on the question that I asked and your answer is like going into like, what are you bringing into your life? And that is the fact that here in the Western culture, we allow things to happen. But what happens when people stand their ground and say, no, that's not okay, right? To these big organizations. Because one of my biggest things and one of my coaching is like, if you look at my tagline as of late, has been like bridging the gap of wellness in the workplace. Because there's so many missing things. There's so much we can get done without the old paradigm of like this hustle, hustle, hustle. And it's just like, guess what? Number one, we're not the greatest country in the world anymore. Guess who's coming in? And that's China, because they're actually dealing with what we have been dealing with for the last 30 or 40 years. If you look at the mental health issues in China are very high. I've seen it firsthand. You know what I mean? Yeah, they may not be revealing the data because guess who controls the media in China? The Communist Party. So obviously they're gonna make China look amazing. But in all actuality, if you go over there, they're smarter, they work harder, they do everything much better than us, and they have been for many years, and this is why they're becoming number one. But does it matter to even be number one? Like, I think that instead of dealing like with a GDP thing, and this can be another whole conversation. It's like looking at how a country is doing based on their GDP is like, look at how a country is doing based on their happiness factor. Like, are people content? Are people living the best lives that they possibly can? What's your homelessness situation? Like, what's the percentage of your homelessness? Like, all these different contextual factors that we can bring in. But when it comes to like the question I ask is like, how can we say no? And that's something that I do really well in my job. Is just like, this is not okay. Like, oh, working after a specific time, not okay for me. Maybe for another person it will be, but maybe they want to start work a little later. Let them start work. If they're doing great work, let them do that. Why are we still tied down to a 9 to 5? That's not okay anymore. People got families, people are working from home. I think COVID was a gift in disguise because it revealed so much. It revealed like our lives, like people weren't able to fake things anymore. And going back to what you said is like, what is the life you're co-creating? It's like, well, you're bringing that more in. You're bringing that busyness, you're bringing that, like, all that things, because you're saying it's okay versus being like, no, this is not okay. Here's the boundary. This is where we got to think about it. And granted, there's going to be moments in any organization where they're like growing and they're going to be working harder and all that things. But it's like, well, do you have a person who's going to be smart at creating efficiencies and systems to make sure that your people aren't burnt out? That's my thing. Like, I hate seeing people burnt out. I hate seeing people like no low energy, because all these other bad things start to happen. The way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And if you're exhausted, you're going to be a horrible parent. You're going to be a horrible friend. You're going to be a horrible brother, sister, yada, yada, mother, father, blah, blah, blah. And it'll just start like, it's like a domino effect. So how can we bring it in with something that we spend so much time in? Like 40% of our lives is spent doing some kind of like vocation or career or whatever you want to call it. How can we make it where that doesn't even feel that way anymore? It's just part of your life. So yeah, I kind of went a little.
No, I think what you're saying is super important, because it comes down to discernment. It's
What
really,
you said the last time.
yeah, it's like discernment. It's like really just getting super clear on what is good and what is not good for you. And what came through for me, and this, I think this is a great place to wrap this, is like if you want like a simple way of like, okay, it's co-created the universe stuff, or like, saying no or saying yes or whatever, like whatever it is. And this is a simple thing, but not easy, because life will continue lifing, and unless you know that you are in control. And when you actually know when you then you know that every decision you make counts, because it's coming from you. And it's, like you said, like, do we value GDP or do we value happiness? And you could look at a microcosm in your own life, because like, we do what we value. We act and are what we value. And so it's like, and we accept what we value or what we're choosing to value. So, or because we see the value in it. And so it could be as simple as is like, choose to value your joy. If you value your joy, then you can look at everything in your life right now.
Does this bring me joy or no?
That brings me joy. This person doesn't bring me joy. This person brings me joy. This person brings me a lot of joy. Or like what, or like this job, this career brings me joy. This exercise routine brings me joy. Like whatever the fuck it is, use that as your barometer of like, use how you feel about something to decide what effort you want to put into it. And that's so fucking hard for Americans, or like you said, people in the Western culture to hear, because it's all about being tough, especially if it's a guy listening to this. Oh, it's like, fuck that. Like, what does it mean, happiness? Like, I just gotta get my shit done. I gotta work, or I gotta hustle. I gotta fucking hustle. It's like, great, hustle towards something that brings you joy. Hustle your face off, and while you're smiling the entire fucking time.
Exactly.
Or like do something with urgency, but you're like, fuck, I love this, and like, I gotta get this done now, but I'm gonna fucking get it done with like
huge smile on your face.
Yeah, with absolute bliss in my heart. You know what I mean? Or like, this person is like, I don't feel good when I'm around them, and like, I don't have any time on this planet to not feel good. So bye, or like, I'll see you later. I'll see you when you can meet me here, whatever it is. So it's like, just follow that, follow what feels good. And if you don't know what feels good, then sit the fuck down, take a pause, and figure out what feels good. Start learning about yourself and what makes you feel good. Because if you don't know what makes you feel good, you probably haven't felt good in a long time.
Ooh.
So sit down, figure out what makes you feel good, and just start following that feeling, and more good will come into your life, because that's what you're putting out. What you put out is what you get in. So that's that, man.
Aho.
Oh. And this is something that we both are obviously working on, like
Yep,
this.
exactly.
This is something that we're working through as well. So, by all means, if you got something else, if you have a higher perspective, share that, let us know.
Let us know.
We're here to learn as well. So,
All right,
anything else, brother?
not here. I'm excited to see. I mean, we already have an idea of what our next episode is going to be on, or at least episode. So yeah, that's it.
All right, party people, as always, thank you for tuning in. Share, subscribe, give us 5 stars if it helped. Let us know.
Do all those nice things, please. Thanks.
Do all those nice things. If you have things you want us to talk about, send those in, and we'll be happy to speak on them.
Yes.
And we're just gonna keep these episodes running. So, as always, thanks for tuning in. Much love, guys.
Much love.
Peace.
Peace.